Welcome, everyone, to episode 175 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am your inscrutably silent podcast host, Jared Hornbeck, and I'm coming to you from my cousin Arnie's garage here in Brooklyn, New York. But no, I am not the only person who is trying to escape this invisible force field. No, who else is here with me?
Well, I'm Steve Guntley, and I definitely know what a totem pole is. Why would you ask? This is the podcast about buffalo shit, green eye lightning, and fucking dead person language. That's because this is the podcast about Totem, yet another classic David DeCoteau joint from that miracle run of 11 movies that he made in a 2-year span for Full Moon. One of a movie that I'm already kind of struggling to remember, if I'm going to be completely honest with you both. I was going over my notes. I watched this movie 3 days ago, and it was the second time watching it. And even now I'm going over the notes and just being like, I do not remember this happening. I do not remember what this is in reference to. So maybe the totem has cast a spell on me. We will get into it. But first we need to welcome our very special guest returning to the show for the second time. Please introduce yourself, special guest.
Howdy, hi, it's me, LT, aka queedem0n. What it do?
We are so excited to have you back. Thank you for joining us. Previously heard on Bad CGI Gator. Give it to this movie. There's no bad CGI to be found in this. There are bad other special effects, but no bad CGI in this one. So we're mixing it up for you.
Truly, thank you for that.
I don't do this very often, but I feel like compelled to let both of you know, and I guess, you know, by the transitive property, all of our listeners will learn this at the same time.
Sure.
I set a timer when I came in with my intro. I set a timer because this movie very pointedly is like, can we get to exactly 60 minutes if we don't count 10 minutes of opening and closing credits? And so I have made it our goal. If we are going to get this episode in under an hour.
Yes,
we will. I will give Steve the hand signal for the let's wrap this up at about, unless it happens before this, at like the 52-minute mark, so we can get all of our plugs and everything out of the way, because man, this movie struggles to hit that feature length mark.
It really, really does. This is I want to run the list again, just as sort of to remind people the movies that David DeCoteau made back to back between 1997 and 2000. So in order, this is Lurid Tales, which we covered, Shrieker, Curse of the Puppet Master, Talisman, Frankenstein Reborn, The Killer Eye, Witch House, Totem, Retro Puppet Master, Prison of the Dead, and Final Stab. So the only one in there that kind of counts is Micro Mini Kids, which is a Moonbeam film that he quit after 4 days. So he doesn't fully get credit on that. But that's a crazy.
So you're telling me, Steve, that he quit after production was finished?
Exactly. He left after production was finished. This also means that we have now covered all of the David DeCoteau Miracle 11, except for Micro Mini Kids, which we will, I'm assuming, get to at some point. But that's the whole run. And there's some real highs and lows in here. I have to say, looking up and down. I'm walking away from this thinking like Prison of the Dead was pretty fun. I got a lot out of Shrieker. Killer Eye is memorable for being the worst movie that we have covered, in my personal opinion. I think that is the absolute bottom. That's the very, very bottom of the totem pole, shall we say? And then Lurid Tales is like fun in a dumb, campy way, so it's a real mixed bag. But I think the lesson here should be that nobody should make 11 movies in 2.5 years, because that's just too much. You're going to burn yourself out. Now,
it's twice. Am I okay?
Oh,
sorry, it looked for a second like my mic wasn't coming through. It's actually over twice the amount of the movies that they make a joke about in Brian De Palma's Blowout, one of my favorite movies of all time. But there's a gag in the beginning where John Travolta, they're like, "How long have we worked together?" And John Travolta names 5 films, and the other guy goes, "Yep, almost 2 years," and that's a joke. This is a reality. This is like DeCoteau is firing these off. And I will say, whatever my personal opinion about this one is, about how successful or unsuccessful it is in myriad of ways, I do think it feels very much like, I don't want to say an afterthought, but very much just like checking boxes. Like this this one doesn't jump out as one that really was given a lot of care and a lot of extra thought. I think there are highlights in that run. Like I think Shrieker probably is among the best of the ones that are in that run. I actually think Final Stab is probably the best of them in the run.
Yeah, that one's
like,
fun. That one's enjoyable.
Like Final Stab kind of works. We've had some success on the show with finding two, like shameless Scream knockoffs in Final Stab and Scared, which you would have heard last
and
week.
Bleed, yeah.
And Bleed, yeah. So 3 actually. That
3.
all kind of work. But this one to me, it just feels like very by the numbers, and even in its like runtime, it's like you could tell that there's executives standing there going, just get this thing to 60 minutes somehow, and we'll get it out there. It doesn't really feel inspired.
Yeah, LT, but do you have much of a relationship with the works of David DeCoteau? We haven't covered it with you before, but he's a staple on our show.
No, I'm sure I did not do my prom work properly. I feel like I'm a little understudied for this.
No, you're totally
I did
fine.
do a bit of a dive into like more of like his works, just haven't seen any of them, but I definitely read a couple of the bios. The Shriek one that you guys are discussing is definitely one that I added to my watch list. And the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, I guess I got to bump it up.
It's a fun little guy movie, it's like a little creature. It's like he's got a face with another face coming off of it. He's it's a clever creature design. It doesn't move a whole lot, but it's not bad. I
love a little critter.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in the right place.
I have a little bit of like retroactive affection for Retro Puppet Master, which like doesn't really super work on its own merits, but it's got a couple of things that are, it's trying some weird stuff that I kind of like. And then Curse of the Puppet Master was just kind of this weird misfire. Kind of hard to describe. Not even the worst Puppet Master movie, just kind of very odd.
It would be the worst one though if there wasn't one that was entirely archival footage.
I think I've seen Retro Puppet Master. Is that the one with the blonde guy who's like Andre
from The Room? Yeah, Greg Sestero.
It's like almost like opera, like he works in a theater house.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a fancy guy wearing a cravat, and we have the early like wooden renditions of the Puppet Master crew.
Yeah. At one point, I wanted to watch all of the Puppet Master movies, but obviously that canon is ever going.
It's dense. We haven't even gotten all the way through them yet. We're working through them 2 movies at a time, and we haven't even reached the end. And then there's the remake. I guess it's not really a remake; it's more of a reboot. The Littlest Reich was done outside of the Full Moon universe. That didn't really take off, but I imagine we need to cover that.
Well,
let's learn a little.
What did we throw? Was it Demonic Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys? We threw in there also, which we covered, which was not, technically, but as you guys are well aware at this point, like, you know what, like Steve and I make the rules. And a couple of weeks ago, we did an episode that was 18% Murder Bot, 82% Chopping Mall. And you know what, like Chopping Mall doesn't fall under the umbrella of what we cover, but who cares?
It's so funny that we're like rebelling against ourselves. It's like we put ourselves in this box. We can take ourselves right out of it, but we're just like, oh, can we do that? Can we do this with the spreadsheet? And we're like, yeah, of course we can. Why can't we? But whatever. Let's learn a little bit about the movie Totem, which was released September 28th, 1999. It's directed by David DeCoteau. It's written by Neil Marshall Stevens, who is once again credited as Benjamin Carr. And this stars Jason Font, Marissa Tate, Eric W. Edwards, Sasha Spencer, Tyler Anderson, and Alicia Logano. And that is the entire cast. And according to the ever-reliable IMDb trivia, this was shot in 4 days, which makes sense for the time period and the 2 locations that this movie worked with. And as we mentioned, this is part of that miracle run of David DeCoteau movies where he made 11 movies back-to-back. Most of these movies, as Dave J mentions in his book, It Came from the Video Aisle, are show Bible, essentially. He describes this movie and several of those others as interchangeable. And I think this one definitely meets that requirement. I think the easiest comp would be Talisman, which is another movie from this run. Talisman is a little more fun, I think, just because of how quickly and how completely it becomes a homoerotic drama, like just pretty much like immediately.
So I'm going to stop
there's a
you,
time
Steve,
when
because
coy about this at least a little bit.
well, and so LT, if you are not versed in Dave DeCoteau, this is what you need to know: is he makes a certain kind of movie, which often culminates with a very hunky short hair brunette in a pair of tidy whities or boxer briefs. That is the
almost every
calling
one of his
card
movies. Yeah.
of every DeCoteau movie.
It's so
Except this
funny you
one.
say that, because that's literally the only thing I remember about Retro Puppet Master was about this like full-lipped white boy in a very beautiful lighting.
he you know, that's always been, and you know, DeCoteau, we've covered this many times on the show, but he was kind of put in charge of the Torchlight label, which was the erotic drama label that they were putting out, and Charles Band just kind of let him do his thing and walked away from it. And he's got an anecdote in his book where he says a PA came to him one day. It's like, just to let you know, David's been directing all these movies and they've become quite overtly gay, because he is an openly gay man and that's his interest, and that's great. And that kind of led to him sort of spinning off from that. And he made a movie that we covered early in the run called Voodoo Academy, which wound up being like a very important queer softcore movie, and that sort of helped him transition just completely into queer softcore movies, which I think he enjoys a lot more and is better at.
Yeah, and it's funny, LT, that you brought up Retro Puppet Master for the lighting on Greg Sestero, because the movie before that one, Curse of the Puppet Master, there is the actual denouement of the movie is the protagonist of the movie stripped down to his tidy whities and tied up, and that's like that's how that one ends,
As he should be.
It's just everyone. Lots of this movie is missing some of those DeCoteau hallmarks. Like, we've had people on the show in a similar situation who weren't really familiar with his filmography, but they were like, oh yeah, I could see that. There's a lot of chest rubbing in this movie. Yeah. There's not so much of that as much of that in this one.
No.
Just remember one shot in particular where there is something happening at the window, and there is Len standing in the foreground and someone is in the background looking at the window, but in the foreground is a soft focus of Len's very voluptuous chest, just in the middle of the shot, while this woman is frantically searching at the window behind him. So the writing is on the walls with this one.
Very much so. And this is classic DeCoteau in a lot of ways, in which we have a lot of extremely hunky men, and then the women are sort of styled identically and are treated kind of like an afterthought. I really did have a hard time telling these three actresses apart. I don't mean to be mean to them in any way. I think that's just kind of the way that they've been presented in this movie is sort of, to borrow Dave J's word, interchangeable. Kid, does anyone want to attempt to summarize the plot on this? Because I don't really have any other research on this other than Charles Band has a story credit on this, which means I assume he made the pitch to have like a little totem pole monster or something come to life. And that's sort of what we get. We get very, very brief flashes of the tiny terrors in this movie. Most of this is kind of like a locked room mystery. This opens with something that, like a trope that I always respond to, which is strangers arrive at a unique location for reasons they don't fully understand. So this is House on Haunted Hill. This is Identity. This is 13 Ghosts. This is stuff like that. That it's always a good starting point for a movie. Or what was Bad Times at El Royale? That's another good one recently that did that.
It also reminded me of that 5 characters in search of an exit Twilight Zone.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah, which you're always going to get me on board with that. And I think it's a little clumsily executed. It's people just showing up and saying like, "Why are you here? I don't know. Why are you here? I don't know." You know, and they take a little bit too long to kind of get to. And each character kind of goes in order and says, "I'm this name and I am this type of person. I'm this name and I am this type of person." Like, they're very quick to sort of identify their generic types.
Right. They're so structured with it too. It just felt so awkward where he literally has to say like to the camera, "And now it's time for introductions. I'm Paul."
Literally, you just like, "Yeah, hello, Paul, welcome."
Yeah, like it's an NA meeting or something.
Yeah.
I was able to look. I always like to look up the actors in these movies to see if anybody kind of goes on to do anything else. I think Jason Font went on to be the Red Power Ranger in the 2001 season, which was called Power Rangers Time Force. So we have a legit Power Ranger in the cast.
He's got Power Ranger energy.
He has Power Ranger energy. Yeah,
he has eyes.
And he has like deeper seasoned Power Rangers energy. We're like, we've kind of given up on having a continuity. Marissa Tate, she did nearly 200 episodes of The Bold and the Beautiful. Alicia Logano still works steadily to this day, lots of TV credits. But Tyler Anderson, who is ostensibly the lead here, he plays Robert, and he's got an accent I was never fully able to place. I think maybe French Canadian, like if I had to guess, but there's nothing much about him. Extremely handsome man, not the most compelling actor in the world, and he only did this and one other brief David DeCoteau film called Micro Mini Kids, which we already referenced. I believe he quit when DeCoteau quit, so not a big part in that, and he has not acted since. Neither has Eric Edwards or Sasha Spencer. Still, three like continuously working actors in a DeCoteau film is actually not a bad batting average. Like 50% of the cast of this movie are still working actors. So,
well, Tyler Anderson, which I say that name hesitating, I feel like that's what's on his headshot, and that maybe not on his birth certificate.
I would say. Yeah,
but
yeah.
That guy, it's just funny because sometimes you run into somebody where it's very clearly like they're a non-actor, and like that guy is a non-actor. Like sometimes he sounded French Canadian, other times he sounded like the awesome girl from House on Sorority Row, who's like how do we know she is alive line reading, or just like Tommy Wiseau, which is just a space alien beamed in and is doing some weird amalgam of different Eastern European accents.
Truly.
But it's so funny when this stuff is obvious, and maybe it's not obvious to someone who picked up Totem off the shelves in 1999, but it's obvious to us who are doing this show, where it's like, this guy clearly is just a DeCoteau type. Like DeCoteau saw him, I don't know, in like an underwear model in a catalog or something, and was like, that guy is exactly what I want for this kind of bill. It's just a chiseled, strong jaw, short, brunette haired guy, really conventionally handsome guy, who shockingly keeps his clothes on in this movie, because I kind of had him pegged from the beginning, like that guy, that's going to be the guy who the camera's going to ogle him a little bit. And it doesn't as much as I anticipated it to, but it's very much a non-actor, and he's stylized in a way where it's just like, again, this is DeCoteau's type.
Yeah.
And I don't say this all that often on the show, where I a lot of times we'll speculate influence of things. This was one of those times where I could feel the direct influence of something, and the timing of it worked out so perfectly, which was, like we said, this movie was shot in 4 days. I'm imagining written probably within a week or two before that. And again, the story idea from Charles Band could have come really at any time. The movie American Pie was released nationally on July 9th, 1999. This movie this movie also has the distinction, in my opinion, of being one of the few movies that's actually time-stamped with its actual production day.
Oh yeah.
That day that's on those grave sites, I guarantee you that is the day of production.
Oh, I'm willing to bet.
And so there was definitely a call for the character of Len is we need a Stifler type. We need a Sean William Scott. Like, we had that character was brand new. Like, Stifler and his mom were not in the vernacular a couple months after, but from July to August of 1999, everyone knew who Stifler's mom was.
We knew what a MILF was from that moment on.
We did, and we were better for it.
Yes, look at how much society has grown with MILF acceptance.
But I was laughing because I'm like, okay, that guy is clearly styled after Sean William Scott. And then I'm looking, I'm like, but wait a minute, this is 1999. Did this beat American Pie to release? And then I thought about it. I'm like, no, this must have been streamlined so quickly after the release of American Pie. It has to be a direct reference. And I was looking and I was like, yeah, maybe. I wonder, again, 4-day production. When in 1999 was this? I know release was in September or something like that.
Right.
And I'm like, then when they show the tombstone with the August 12th, 1999, I'm like, that is the day they set dressed this.
Mhm.
Somebody was like, this is set in the present, like 100%. And I would never say with certainty that that's the case in other movies. I am throwing down the gauntlet 100%. That is the day that was shot, or at least like, or the day before or something like that.
They're like, we can't record on the 13th because then the movie would be over.
Exactly. Yeah.
The ritual would be done.
They really care about that continuity. It's very important to that. I realized I got sidetracked from the plot, but that's because like once you set out that intriguing initial premise, they kind of just do nothing with it. They're all there because there is something that they're identifying as a totem pole. Now, I want to say I am no expert on this subject, but I did live for a long time.
Thank you for clarifying.
I did live for a long time in the Pacific Northwest, where totem poles are frequent, and that's where they originate from. And this is not a totem pole that I've ever encountered in my life. It's more of a gargoyle.
Right. It looks kind of like a bookshelf. And they were
kind
just
of a
like little
bookshelf.
critters just like tossed in it. Like you had 3 distinct little area, or like cubbies rather, that you just like shoved these little puppets into until they were ready to cause chaos and acts of malice. It was kind of wild. Not really a totem pole by any design I've ever seen before at all.
More of a Funko Pop end cap,
Without the glass casing.
I mean, this is a tiny terror movie to a degree. Like we see these things come to life a tiny bit, but these are not articulated puppets. This is the equivalent of, when you're a kid and you just straighten out your Ninja Turtles arms and legs and then move them up and down to simulate movement. Like this is sub Muppets. This is not, there's no puppeteering to speak of. These are action figures being slightly moved across some fog.
There's like a little rod in the back of his head that like jiggles its eyes,
Kinda, yeah, like barely even that. But these do not make an impression at all. Like if you're making a canon of tiny terrors, these don't even register.
Agreed, but I do feel like it's important to say 2 things. One, you're saying this is not puppetry. I beg to differ, because one of the most hilariously egregious continuity mistakes where file under, I don't know how this made it into the movie, is when the totem first jumps down from the windowsill and half of the frame is strings, like the thickest cables you've ever seen. Like no effort being made to hide them. It cuts back to another shot of the totem after a reaction shot, and the totem is placed in a way and facing a way where it can obscure them. When it first jumps down, it comes way too far down into the screen, into the frame, and there are just the thickest cables you've ever seen holding this thing. So somebody is puppeting that during certain scenes. There's also another continuity error that I couldn't believe made it into the movie. I say that as we're talking about a movie that was shot in 4 days.
Yeah.
Which is when Len is being like manhandled in the window by the totem. The totem throws Len to the floor, and there's an honest to goodness, got to be close to a full second, where the face of the person puppeting the totem is in frame.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I was like, the audacity of thinking like, nope, cut it, print it, it's good. Like
that's the 7th sacrifice.
It was insane. But Steve, we're mentioning how these don't really resemble anything that we know totems as being. What they do resemble are the totems from Puppet Master 4 and 5, which are
a little bit
called totems,
which are totems, and those are not like the most interesting designs, but they're more distinctive and interesting than this, because these ones, like sometimes you get like a lizard like form out of them, but oftentimes they are just like still in a block of stone, so they just don't really have much of anything. And again we just see them so fleetingly, and I never really understood what their goal was, despite this movie, I was really pretty bored with this movie, but there's a moment very late in the run where they very audaciously decide to do a narrated exposition dump, which with a voice that sounds like Clancy Brown. I cannot imagine that they paid Clancy Brown's wage to get him to come in and narrate this, but it sounds a little bit like Clancy Brown. And they're just showing footage of an old Kirk Douglas movie called The Vikings, which was an Italian production. I'm wondering if like Albert Band had something to do with that production or something, because he was working in the Italian cinema during that era. So that could be why they had the rights to show bits of that movie. But we are just seeing like bad final cut effects being put over old footage of the Vikings while there's narration explaining all the plot holes in this movie.
Archival movie footage being used essentially as a newsreel for exposition is wild, and not something I was expecting to start happening in this movie. And it was one of the more bizarre choices that the movie makes. And it's like, okay, let's be charitable and call that an artistic flourish, like something they wanted to do that was different. Like you're saying, Steve, that it's very easy to get bored during this movie, which is kind of crazy considering that there's only really 58 minutes of movie here, given the 4-minute opening credits and like 6-minute end credits. But when the movie started, I was like super on board for the first like 10 minutes, maybe, because I was like, okay, this is kind of a neat premise. The way that it's introduced, it's just amazing to me. And again, I guess this is just having access to resources. It's like, we've established that these people are strangers. We like when things begin in media res. We're here, their people are arriving. We want to know how they got there, why they're there. They all talk about how they were doing things when they just were, I guess, zapped out of reality and placed in this cabin. And so, or arrive at the door of this cabin at least. And it's like, these are the times when it's like, I wouldn't even have mind one singular flashback scene for each character. Or something to give us a little bit more context. Like, you can do that and still have this thing come in at a cool 70 minutes. Like of movies, 75 with credits. But like, it just felt so bare bones in that way. And it was like, made the plot of the movie hard to follow, because then stuff would start happening, but they're relegated to one of two sets to explain anything. So it was like, clearly there is an Evil Dead reference, not a reference, but influence, I should say, on this movie. Like, clearly they have seen Evil Dead. They had seen Cabin in the Woods, although Cabin in the Woods didn't exist yet at that time, but a Cabin in the Woods type story, or as this one is maybe a cabin on a boat based on the camera work. It was filmed like in the middle of the mist attack from the movie The Mist, and it's just like anytime they go outside, it's just like all foggy. But I think it's just to conceal that they're just like in somebody's backyard, you know.
This was a paid actor.
Yeah, exactly. The Mist ate up most of their budget. He demanded scale.
Yeah, it was his writer was really insane. You don't know what he was asking for there. But it's like, this movie is patient zero of David DeCoteau using the sweeping camera technique, which he would overuse it in Final Stab to the point where you kind of got seasick watching a movie.
Right. It was a lot of like
entirely on land. And here I feel like this is kind of the first time where he's like trying it out. Like, it's like, what if I dip the camera here and have some low angles and have the camera sway a little bit? And it's like, I get that again as a flourish, but it's like, it doesn't really make sense for the story that's being told here, which I like to think that I'm a reasonably intelligent person. And I genuinely didn't really understand the plot of this movie.
It's so unstructured. It's so like, because even there's a point where they try to get a little meta with it, where they're just like, oh, this is happening because everything is predetermined. I was supposed to go out here. We were supposed to talk in here and let that person go outside. It just like, that could have been an interesting path to go down to. It's just, this movie doesn't really make any of those like full-blooded commitments to like whatever it like attempts to bring up. And I think what you're saying too about like the first 10 minutes being like the most entertaining part of it, they just like, David really just drops the ball, and it's like, it's not a ball that's, you know, kind of pretty to look at. It's this mangled, distraught mess of a movie where these like poor people are just bottlenecking toward their own deaths, and it's very messy. I don't want to say that it was like anything against the budget, but it's just like, I don't know, it felt at some points it just feels a little like low effort, like in his regard toward like making that commitment to creating this cool supernatural slasher in what could have been the Tiny Terror.
I mean, this is a senioritis movie. This is a movie that he's made at the very tail end of this really grueling run, and he just doesn't have any juice in the tank for this particular movie. Like, you're exactly right. Like, the point of using that structure of having like all the strangers come together at a location is for a third act reveal, right? We need to reveal that A, like there are threads of fate that are connecting them, or B, like there's going to be some turn. There's somebody who we've overlooked. There's some detail that we've overlooked that's going to explain everything and why these people are here together. We never get that. It just kind of like, this might as well just be like the movie Deathbed, The Bed That Eats, where it's just like people just keep showing up to the house just because there's a house on the side of the road. Why wouldn't I break into it and sleep in the bed? You know, obviously, like it just feels like random happenstance, and that's just disappointing when you introduce that structure. You know, like I want to see the puzzle box kind of click into place, and we never get that.
Yeah, and it's like, if you're judging by the runtime, then Neil Marshall Stevens wrote a 55 or 56 page script, which I don't feel is the case. I feel like there was probably an 80-page script originally written for this, and in taking stuff out and going like, well, obviously we can't shoot this, and this is unrealistic, and this is not something we can do, it was a real detriment, because I feel like it probably it took out a lot of necessary exposition, or at least some creative stuff that would have given a better picture for a better understanding as to why stuff's happening. It felt like very piecemeal. It felt like there were large sections omitted that were more important maybe than they realized that they were. Like, I have a very hard time thinking that it was like, okay, we need a feature, so we need something to get us to minute 60. Oh, okay, well, here's this, 59-page script. I genuinely don't think that that's true. I think this was probably initially first drafted as something that was 75 pages long.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, we've got to rip this page out. And in doing so, it made something that is kind of incomprehensible. And then once something interesting was happening, it jumped to something else entirely, which maybe was or was not as interesting. I thought there was a kind of a funny moment where the one character, and again, it is hard to differentiate the characters in this movie, and I'm going to do the best job that I can. And I might actually be wrong about this, because Alma is kind of our final girl, for lack of a better description.
Yeah.
I think it maybe is the character of Roz, who is tied down and then is like,
no, I think that's Tina, the high school.
Oh, it's Tina. Okay,
the
high school girl.
The one with the really crappy headband.
Yes. I didn't make that note, but you're correct about that. Yeah, she's tied down and she is speaking. Do they say what the dialect is that she's speaking? Yeah, it's sort of like, not that she's speaking in tongues, but sort of like she's reciting the Necronomicon or something. And then like the hilarious thing with or Robert, yes, that character whose name definitely would be Robert.
Right.
They're like, oh, you understand what she's saying? And they're like, he's like, not really. And then he perfectly translates everything that she says.
It's just incredibly convenient for the plot to happen at that exact moment, for them to just be like, okay, well, now we finally are getting into the meat of like why we're here. And it's like a little fascinating, right? Because you have like this setup of like 3 of us are supposed to be victims, 3 of us are supposed to be killers. So it does kind of like really lead into like, ooh, this is actually gonna start heating up. Like maybe we can start seeing some action sequences of people like, pleading for their lives or deceiving one another. And I think we get that pretty immediately with was it Roz and Len? And that is honestly like that was probably the only part of the movie that I was like I actually kind of like widened my eyes a little bit because I was like, oh, okay, wow, a bit of a surprise. Like, you know, it's this unassuming like female character who has at this point brought literally nothing but scraps and crumbs to the table.
Yeah.
And is now, you know, this shovel wielding badass, literally like decking Len and, you know, killing him right in front of these little buddies. It was kind of a nice little switch up, but I think it takes too long to get to that point. It feels a little bit like incomplete Swiss cheese. There's too many holes.
Well, it feels incomplete and it feels disjointed. And I don't always reference IMDb descriptions when I'm talking about a movie, but I find the one for Totem to be pitch perfect. It is written as follows. 6 people find themselves transported to a remote cabin surrounded by an invisible barrier. In a nearby graveyard, they discover an ancient carved stone monument that they dub a totem pole.
Yeah, I do love that distinction.
Correct.
It's like
They do that.
They call it
Yeah.
that. It's like they're just covering their bases. We want to make it very clear they are calling it that. We don't know what one is.
The blame of the appropriation of this pole is not because of us writing it. Those characters. They said it.
They got look. We can't help that they're ignorant. Okay, it's not our fault.
They drove the bus.
They're dubbing things left and right.
There's like an implied continuation of it's like stuff happens. We don't really know what.
Yeah.
I don't think the people that were in the movie know either.
No, I really don't. I have to say, I don't think I have a whole lot more else to say about the movie Totem, and I think that still gives us the world record for the longest amount of time anybody's talked about the movie Totem. Like every once in a while, I have those moments on this show where like we must be the ones who have talked longest about this movie in a public forum. And there's a handful of those, and Totem is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I just was thinking about like I guess I sat there and there was a real like when are they going to get to the fireworks factory type feeling about like when is the mysticism and the cultural stuff like that I think of that I link to like totem poles in like native culture, stuff like that. Like when is that really going to come to the forefront? Like when are we going to learn about how these creatures are tied to what I understand as being a totem pole?
Right.
And where is like the kind of indigenous imagery? It really isn't interested in ever doing that. And I agree, like there are times where it puts its money in amusing places, like the green eye lightning is always kind of fun when that happens.
Yeah. Never mad about that.
Puppet pull sequence out of a window just to pad time, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
For the whimsy of it all.
And again, the use of that recycled stock footage is just so incongruous and so out of nowhere that like it's the one thing that sort of made me perk up in this movie. After the initial like setup was proving to sort of not be going anywhere, I was just sort of in and out with my attention span until this happened, and I'm just like, wait, what's going on? Did the movie get bored and change the channel? Like,
apparently it's supposed to be like some sort of like dream sequence that she has, but it's never like implied that she achieves unconsciousness. And then like she wakes up on the couch, and David is like, "Oh, we went to see this," and she's like, "But you left me here alone," and he was like, "No, I carried you."
Yeah.
Just like, sure, okay.
That's why there was only one set of footprints. Yeah, exactly.
God damn it, you beat me to that a fraction of a second. I was going to literally say the exact same thing.
I mean, do you think they're just kind of, you mentioned the Evil Dead, like, you think they're just kind of like doing a lazier version of that opening of Evil Dead 2, like where we get sort of the stop motion Necronomicon, and we do see footage of like old timey warriors in like metal garb, you know, so maybe this is just sort of a quicker, lazier, less stylistically successful rendition of that idea. Like, I don't know, if I'm meeting it halfway on that.
Definitely an influence.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it may be not entirely conscious, but definitely an influence. But I do feel like it's very difficult to make a straightforward, sincere horror movie set in a cabin with demonic forces where you're not harkening back to Evil Dead. Like, it's in the DNA. It's like, you can't, if you're going to do something like a cabin in the woods where you're going to go meta and you're going to turn some shit, then obviously like Evil Dead is just one of like a plethora of influences you're pulling from. Whereas like this type of thing is very apparent early on that some of it is very directly influenced. And I will say, like, there are moments that the movie doesn't quite earn some of the batshit crazy moments that it has, like the shovel face bashing. I wanted more of that because it's like, oh, they're giving, like, there's some blood and there's some gore effects and it looks very silly and very stagey, but I want to know at least that, like, in a production like this is where you're putting your money. Like, it should be in those types of scenes. Yeah. And there was definitely more opportunities for some gore scenes, especially when it was outside in the cemetery set. It was like, I wish they would have gone a little further with that kind of stuff. And that's why this is a very muddled movie, because it's playing with a lot of things, but in a very, not a cohesive type way. Like, it's playing with like demonic possession, and here's the history that these three, how do they refer to them again in the movie? It's like the masters and the souls. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like there's all of a sudden there's mythology, and you got to be careful when you're introducing mythology, because it's like one of my biggest, like, I'm a staunch defender, and because we're padding this episode for time, I don't mind bringing this up now. I'm a staunch defender of Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Yeah, great movie.
The Dream Master. I think it's really well made. I think Alice as a character is a very sympathetic character. I wish I liked her arc more. I don't really like part 5, but like, I think in part 4, she is a strong character who you really root for. And I think Elm Street was good about that in the early sequels in the first movie, about like having you, even when Freddy turns into like wisecracking Freddy, you're never really like rooting for him in the movie. But I feel like one of the kind of sins of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is that all of a sudden, 2/3 of the way through the movie, they introduce this concept of the Dream Master, which is the subtitle of the movie. And it's very much like, oh yeah, the Dream Master, it's this thing. You learned about this. You know about the Dream Master. Here's all its mythology. It's introduced way too late, I feel like, in the arc of Dream Warriors into Dream Master, because Dream Warriors establishes one Balinese way of dreaming, how to defeat Freddy type thing. And then all of a sudden it's this other thing. Well, it's like, well, how do we make it that Alice, how would Alice know what to do, harnessing the powers of her friends? And it's like, oh, here's this brand new mythology. And if you're a first time viewer of that movie, like, I wouldn't put it past you to be an hour into the movie and just be like, well, that's really stupid.
Right.
Like, why are we just learning about that now? But I feel like you need it. You need some kind of explanation of mythology. And here it's like the characters are hearkening to this thing that's supposed to be understood without a scene of exposition beforehand explaining what any of this stuff means.
Right.
Exactly.
And so it just feels very weird and very disjointed. And again, I feel like I've said this during this 11 movie stretch a couple times. It just felt, this movie maybe even more so than any of the other ones, because and again, shout out to Katie Reif, who was our guest on the episode. To this point, Katie, you have still been the guest on what Steve and I consider to be the bottom of the barrel that we've scraped for this show for Killer Eye. But like, at least with Killer Eye, you get a sense where it's like, okay, they're playing with this 50s sci-fi giant, brain, giant eye type thing. I mean, it's also very much like a softcore movie at the same time.
Yeah.
So at least it's like it can play to that audience. If this movie had scenes like that where the characters were taking their clothes off and there were scenes where they were coupled and having sex scenes or something like that, it would make sense, because it would be like, okay, so they're playing to like the softcore Torchlight crowd also, but they're not in this one. So I think more than any of the other movies in the stretch, this one feels the most to this point to me of being just sort of like an afterthought.
Yeah.
Like it feels the
For
most like this is movie number 9 out of 11 made in a 2-year span that doesn't really have the niche market appeal to work outside of being a horror movie, and it's not really successful as a horror movie, so it just falls flat. At least if it was a horror movie about a totem with spirits and an Evil Dead knockoff and a bunch of these people trapped in the woods, but it also had softcore sex scenes, it could appeal to that audience too. It doesn't have those, so it feels very much like, and I've said this about a few of them, this is the one I feel like you feel it the most. It's the most apathetic and the most like, we're just making a movie, so we have something to release. We're just getting this thing to 60 minutes so we can get it out there on shelves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very low effort, very low reward.
But hopefully the reward was for our listeners who got to hear us really struggle to find some things to talk about.
Yeah,
yeah, and that's now where I'm saying that, and I'm like, okay, do I feel like I owe our guest an apology? Do I feel,
I think they owe us a thank you for suffering on their behalf, for having to do what nobody else was brave enough to do, which is talk about Totem at length on a podcast, breaking world records, as we have discussed.
Yeah.
Well, we're still, I
easily.
checked my timer. We're still not at an hour. We're still, plugging along. I'll give this a backhanded compliment, which is that it was nice to see what I will call classic Full Moon Pictures logo in the beginning. If you follow along with the show, or you're just somebody who knows a lot about the company, they cycle through, whether it's Full Moon Entertainment, Full Moon Pictures, Full Moon Features, and the logo changes slightly. I think even though this is going in a direction of apathy and a direction towards when you're going to see a lot of low effort projects, seeing the Full Moon Pictures logo in the beginning, it did bring me back to like, okay, like this was still concurrent with Blood Dolls and with Head of the Family and with Hideous and The Creeps and other movies from this late 90s period before what we would call sort of like a wilderness period of Charles Band's.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is a lackluster effort, and this does not stand up comparatively with a lot of those other movies. But for a few brief fleeting moments of that logo in the first 5 minutes of this movie, I was like, okay, maybe we found something that is a worthy entry in what I would still consider to be kind of a classic Full Moon period. And unfortunately, it's not. It is much more akin to something like a Curse of the Puppet Master, where it's like, Curse of the Puppet Master benefits from being part of an established franchise and having at least the lore of all of the puppets and like very distinct puppet designs, where this doesn't. At least the totems in Puppet Master 4 have colorful painted on designs on them. Here they're just kind of like a beige, or maybe like, it's hard to tell actually sometimes, because one of the major effects that they chose in this movie is strobe lighting, and they did it as a way to hide, let me rephrase that. They did it as a way to attempt to hide the puppetry that's going on. And it's like anytime, but it's like some of the shots weren't carefully composed, and some of the edits weren't probably the best takes that they had. Well, the best takes they should have taken, because anytime the strobes were, it's like the strobe light is illuminated and then it's obscured and illuminated. And every time it was illuminated, you saw something you shouldn't have seen.
Yeah.
It just like what a lot of thought wasn't given to the orchestration of that.
But I think the coolest thing about this movie, just to kind of take it back to your full moon, is the credits after it. It kind of was very evocative of like booting up a Crash Bandicoot file on the PlayStation. It's so inherently 90s. It feels like very what was it? Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yes.
That like game show. Like it just kind of felt like
obsessed.
I don't know. I mean, maybe they were trying to tap into that like, you know, exoticism thing that they were doing in the 90s of like, oh, this happened in a tropical area, so it must be cooler than everywhere else you've ever been to or seen.
Yeah, where's the aggro crag?
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah, and we should
say that
say
every day.
we were just talking about another movie recently where we identified this is the first appearance of a in a full moon movie of bloopers. And then right away we have a blooper reel, like, or at least some semblance of a blooper reel. At least just like enough. They just let the footage run long just to show that the actors were having fun. Yeah.
I was gonna say that was not so much a blooper reel as it was the other take.
The other take, yeah, exactly. And just kind of like a little bit, it's like, don't worry, guys. We know we just put you through a really terrifying thrill ride, but everybody's fine and they're all happy.
Right.
So
nobody's really dead. Nobody was ever really in danger. There's not 3 victims, not 3 killers. JK.
Yeah. They're all friends. They're all friends. They have a group chat.
You guys totally nailed it in that it's like the world's least earned, like, we need some levity because the audience has been put through the ringer.
Yeah. It was more, you know, at the very least, it was a good reminder. It's like, oh yeah, we just watched a movie. Yeah, these are actors in a movie. Yeah, all right, good for them. Well, I think we can safely close the casket on this one. LT, thank you so much for being here again. We're gonna find a better movie for you one of these days. I know our catalog is starting to get slim, but we're gonna find something better for you to come on and talk about. Where can people? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Where can people find your stuff? Where can people find everything that you do?
Yeah. So I am at queedem0n on pretty much every platform, but it's queedem0n with a 0 instead of an O because nobody does it like me.
Yes.
Right now, you can see me on Instagram, TikTok at queedem0n, and that's usually where I stay. So you can chat with me, talk about horror movies all day. I've got a couple videos that I am working on currently to hopefully release by the end of May, early June, because I've got like a Pride series that I want to get off the ground. We shall see, though. There are no promises. I operate under my own umbrella. So if I'm here, I'm here. If I'm not, just remind me.
Similarly to us, you operate under your own umbrella, which is why next week our episode will be about the movie The Stepfather, just for no other reason other than I want to talk about it. No, that's not true. I wish it were true, honestly, when I look ahead at some of the stuff that we've got up. But you know what? I should never really do that because sometimes, like, if Deadly End taught us nothing, is that sometimes a movie title is just words in a spreadsheet until it becomes very real. And I'm sure we'll find lots of things to enjoy in the things that we're going to cover. And as the show goes on and the number of applicable full moon features dwindles, and Charles Band's still prolific output doesn't quite match our weekly show, schedule, we'll continue to have fun with these movies and bring on incredible guests and probably stretch the formatting of the show slightly. But in all the stuff we're going to cover, I'm sure we're going to find lots of stuff that we like within there that is a fun surprise. And again, with all of queedem0n stuff, you'll find something to love if you check it out. And if you like the show that we do, the best way to tell us is by going to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening. Leave us a 5-star rating, maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. I cannot stress that enough, how it just helps us show up in more people's searches and feeds, the more ratings and reviews that the show has. We appreciate all the ones that have been written by everybody and everyone who's taken the time to do so. But, if you're a listener who hasn't pulled the trigger yet, that's really the best thing you can do to help us out. You can also follow us on Instagram if you want to keep up on kind of like a day-to-day, week-to-week basis on what we're doing. We are at puppetmasters_Castle Freaks. You can also follow me at _Giallo_Jared. You can email us with comments and questions and feedback at puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. We do our day of releasing posts on our Facebook group, on Blue Sky, other social media platforms. So we're around. But you know what? All of that social media-ing, it takes a lot of work. And Steve is a very busy boy with some other stuff. So Steve, what else have you got going on?
Well, I also have another show called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade mashed together. We are talking about movies and the video games based on those movies. We've been having a lot of fun with an extremely eclectic run of movies. Everything from Austin Powers to Minority Report to The Lawnmower Man. I believe the week after you're hearing this, you're going to be hearing us talking about, well, speaking of breaking my own format, we're going to be talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is going to be a hell of a lot of fun. My fiance, very soon to be wife, Ailish, is going to be joining, and that is her favorite thing in the world. So we're going to be talking about it. And it's going to be very exciting. And that's the other big thing I've got going on. I am getting married this month. So we're cramming in some recordings and we're getting everything all set for that so that we don't miss a beat. But very excited about that. So little personal life update, and I'm very excited about. But I'm also very excited for all of you to tune in next week, because we are going to be returning to one of the signature franchises of the Full Moon canon. And we're going to be talking about the movie Killjoy Goes to Hell, which I do not really know much about it. I thought we had kind of completed the trilogy, but turns out he went to hell. I don't know. What are we going to do? We're going to not follow him? He's going to hell.
Yeah, well, he did the normal pipeline, which was he went to Manhattan first.
Yeah, of course.
And then he went to hell. No, Killjoy, there are a bunch of them. And you know what? I'm not that familiar. Other than the fact that Trent Haga was playing Killjoy in those movies, and he is kind of the preferred Killjoy. And if Killjoy 3 was any indicator, I think I kind of like the tone they're striking now. Like, I think my understanding of the more recent Killjoy movies is they're doing something a little bit different, and they kind of understand what movie there are, and they're pretty like silly and colorful, and I'm looking forward to getting into this one.
Killjoy 3 was very clown forward, which these first two, very weirdly, you cannot say that about. So go figure, but we're going to be sending in the clowns next week. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you to LT for guesting once again. And we will see you all next week in hell.
We weren't already there.